I heard the crash before I ever saw the wreck. The CB radio screamed through static, metal twisted in the background, and a voice shouted, "Watch the shoulder." 30 minutes later, I heard that same voice again. But this time, it sounded exactly like mine. Most truckers keep the CB radio on because silence gets dangerous after midnight. But tonight's file contains 3 accounts from drivers who heard transmissions that should not have been possible. Some voices warned them. Some voices knew things they shouldn't. And some voices sounded like they were coming from roads that never let their drivers leave. I was driving through eastern Tennessee when this happened, hauling medical supplies toward Knoxville during a freezing rainstorm in late January. The weather had already caused multiple wrecks earlier that night, and every trucker on the interstate was warning each other to slow down before the mountain curves ahead. Around 2:30 in the morning, traffic started thinning out fast. One truck exited near Bristol. Another disappeared farther ahead near the state line. Then suddenly, I was completely alone on the highway, while freezing rain hissed across the windshield, hard enough to blur the lane markings every few seconds. I remember turning the CB radio volume higher just to hear another human voice. Overnight driving gets dangerous once the road goes quiet for too long. Your brain starts drifting. Shadows start looking wrong. Small sounds inside the cab suddenly feel louder than they should. That's when the transmission started. Heavy static cracked through the speaker first. Then somebody shouted, "Watch the shoulder." The voice exploded through the cab, so suddenly I nearly swerved. Male voice, panicked, breathing hard like he was running or struggling with something. Then another voice screamed over him, "He's going to hit the rail." Loud crash, metal twisting, glass shattering, and silence. I grabbed the mic immediately. "Driver, you all right?" No answer, just static. Then another voice came through. Different man, calm voice, low voice. "You heard that too?" I frowned immediately while checking the mirrors. The highway behind me remained completely empty, except for rain and darkness. "Yeah," I answered. "What channel is this?" The man paused, then quietly replied, 14. Cold spread through my chest instantly, because I never used channel 14. My CB had been sitting on 19 the entire drive. I looked down at the display, expecting to see the numbers change somehow. Still channel 19, but the voice continued anyway. "You need to get off this road." Every hair on my arm stood up. I grabbed the mic again. "What happened back there?" Several seconds passed before the man answered. He didn't see the body. Lightning flashed somewhere ahead beyond the mountains, lighting the interstate bright white for half a second. Empty roads stretched through rain, while forest swallowed both sides of the highway completely. "No state troopers," I said. "No wreck lights." "You sure that just happened?" The man ignored the question. "What mile mark are you passing?" I checked the sign ahead. 218. Long silence followed. Then the voice quietly replied, "That's where they found him." My stomach tightened immediately. "What are you talking about?" Static crackled softly through the speaker. Then the man answered, "The driver from the recording." The rain outside suddenly felt louder. I stared at the radio without speaking, while windshield wipers dragged endlessly across the glass. Something about the way he said recording made my pulse start hammering in my throat. Then the CB crackled again. Same screaming voice from earlier. "He's still in the road." Another crash exploded through the speaker, louder this time, followed by horrible scraping metal. Then screaming, real screaming. The sound cut off so suddenly it left the cab feeling dead silent afterward. I remember gripping the steering wheel hard enough that my fingers hurt. Every instinct told me another wreck had happened nearby, but the highway ahead remained completely empty. No lights, no flares, nothing. Then the calm voice returned. That one was from 2009. Cold spread through my chest instantly. I grabbed the mic. "What the hell are you talking about?" Heavy static hissed through the speaker. Then the man quietly said, "Sometimes the mountain replays them." Lightning flashed again, and this time I saw someone standing beside the guardrail ahead. Human figure, motionless. Reflective rain jacket hanging loosely from the body, head tilted downward toward the pavement. I slammed the brakes instinctively. The truck fishtailed hard across wet pavement, while my trailer shook violently behind me. For one horrifying second, I thought I was about to jackknife across the interstate. Then the figure looked up. Its face reflected white in my headlights. Blank, pale, completely expressionless. And the CB radio screamed again. "He's right there." Loudest transmission yet. The screaming driver sounded absolutely hysterical now. Metal crashed violently in the background, while tires screeched across pavement underneath the static. Then another voice shouted, "Oh God, don't stop." I accelerated hard immediately, while the figure beside the road vanished back into darkness behind me. My pulse hammered so hard, I could barely hear anything except blood rushing inside my ears. The calm voice returned again. Closer now, almost inside the cab. "You changed lanes before the curve." I froze instantly. "What?" Static crackled softly. Then the man quietly said, "The others didn't." Cold spread through my entire body. I looked into the mirrors again. Still nobody behind me. No headlights, no traffic, nothing except rain and darkness swallowing the interstate. Then the CB transmission changed completely. No static now, just breathing, slow breathing, followed by my own voice. "Watch the shoulder." I nearly dropped the mic. The speaker replayed everything exactly as before, except this time the screaming driver was unmistakably me. Same voice, same panic, same breathing, and I heard myself scream, "He's gonna hit the rail." My stomach dropped instantly. I remember staring through the windshield while freezing rain blurred the highway ahead. Then I saw flashing hazard lights around the next curve. Wreck ahead, fresh wreck, state troopers already on scene, and half a semi wrapped around the guardrail. The cab was crushed almost completely inward from the driver's side. I slowed automatically while emergency lights flashed across the rain-covered windshield. That's when I noticed the company logo on the destroyed truck. Same company I worked for, same trailer number format. And hanging open beside the crushed cab door was a torn blue jacket exactly like mine. The CB radio crackled one final time. The calm voice returned, quiet now, almost sympathetic. "You finally heard your own recording." Then the transmission died completely. No static, no voices, nothing. I pulled into the nearest truck stop 20 miles later, just before sunrise. My hands were shaking so badly, I spilled coffee trying to pour it. Another driver noticed and asked if I was all right. I told him about the transmission, the screaming, the wreck. The man listened quietly the entire time without interrupting once. Then he slowly asked me something that still keeps me awake during overnight drives. "When you passed the crash," his expression changed slightly. "Did you ever actually see the driver's body?" Most truckers are afraid of black ice, mountain curves, or falling asleep behind the wheel. But after hearing something like that over the CB radio, you start wondering if some roads remember every death that happened on them. Because think about it for a second. If those transmissions were really recordings from old crashes, why did the voice know exactly which lane would save him? And why was his own voice already on the radio before the accident ahead even happened? But honestly, the part that would stay with me forever isn't the screaming. It's the possibility that somewhere in those mountains, drivers are still transmitting after the crash is already over. I'd been driving long-haul routes for almost 11 years when this happened. By that point, nothing about the road really bothered me anymore. Storms, black ice, empty highways in the middle of nowhere. After enough miles, you stop getting nervous about things most people would never understand. But overnight driving changes the way your mind works, especially when you're alone for too long. Somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, the highway stops feeling like a road and starts feeling like something endless. This happened during a winter route through western Oklahoma. I was hauling refrigerated freight from Albuquerque to Tulsa, mostly driving empty highway for hours at a time. It was one of those nights where the road looked completely dead after midnight. No headlights, no gas stations, nothing except open land and cold wind pushing against the trailer hard enough to shake the cab every few minutes. I usually kept my CB radio on low volume during overnight drives just to hear static in the background. Most truckers still do. Even if nobody's talking, the sound itself helps. Makes the road feel less empty somehow. Around 2:40 in the morning, the CB suddenly cracked with static loud enough to make me jump in my seat. Then a voice came through. "Driver in the blue Freightliner. You still awake?" The voice sounded distorted beneath heavy static. Male voice. Older maybe. I looked around immediately expecting another truck nearby, but the road behind me was completely empty. I picked up the mic anyway. "Yeah? Who's asking?" For a few seconds, nothing answered except static. Then the voice came back quieter this time. "Don't stop at the next rest area." I laughed a little because truckers mess with each other over the CB constantly. Happens every night somewhere. I figured another driver saw my truck earlier and decided to play games. So I asked where he was driving. No answer. Just static again. Eventually, I turned the volume down and kept moving. About 20 minutes later, signs warned about a rest stop coming up ahead. I remember checking the dashboard clock because I was tired enough to think about pulling over myself. The highway stayed completely empty around me. No passing cars, no trucks. Just darkness outside the windshield, an endless road disappearing into the night. Then the CB exploded with static again. "Keep driving." Same voice. This time louder, closer somehow. I grabbed the mic immediately. "All right, who the hell is this?" The voice ignored the question completely. "There's someone hanging behind your trailer." My stomach dropped instantly. I checked the side mirrors automatically, expecting headlights or another truck tucked too close behind me. But there was nothing except darkness and the long shape of the refrigerated trailer bouncing slightly with the road. Then I noticed movement near the rear ladder. For maybe 1 second, I thought I saw pale fingers wrapped around the metal bars behind the trailer. Thin fingers moving slightly against the dark, stepped harder on the accelerator without realizing it. The CB stayed quiet for almost 30 minutes after that. I kept trying to convince myself exhaustion was messing with my head. Long overnight drives do that sometimes. Your brain starts turning shadows into people after enough hours awake. That explanation worked right up until the voice came back again. Still there. I nearly dropped the mic. The road remained completely empty around me. I checked every mirror again, while my pulse hammered hard enough to feel in my throat. Then the voice quietly said something that made my hands go cold on the steering wheel. It climbed onto the roof about 5 miles ago. I pulled the radio closer immediately. "Who are you?" Static crackled for several seconds before the man finally answered. "I used to drive that route too." Before I could say anything else, the transmission cut out completely. No static. No interference. Just silence filling the cab again, while cold air rattled against the trailer outside. I kept driving another 40 minutes before finally reaching a truck stop near Clinton. The second I parked beneath the overhead lights, I climbed out of the cab and checked the trailer myself. Nothing behind it, nothing underneath. The rear doors were still sealed exactly how they should have been. For a few minutes, I actually started calming down. I remember feeling embarrassed standing there in the cold parking lot with a flashlight, while another trucker watched from nearby fuel pumps. Then I looked up. Long scratch marks covered the refrigeration unit near the front edge of the trailer roof. 4 deep lines cut straight through the paint down to bare metal underneath, fresh enough that silver steel still reflected beneath the parking lot lights. I just stood there staring upward while cold wind pushed through the lot around me. Then somebody behind me spoke. "You heard him too?" I turned around fast enough that the flashlight beam shook across the pavement. An older trucker stood near the next fuel island holding coffee in one hand while staring toward my CB antenna. I asked him what he meant. He nodded slowly toward the truck. That voice on Channel 19. Every hair on my arm stood up instantly. The older driver explained that truckers around western Oklahoma had been hearing strange radio transmissions late at night for years. Same distorted voice. Same warnings about highways, rest areas, and empty roads after midnight. According to rumors, a truck driver died somewhere along that route during a snowstorm back in the 90s after stopping to help somebody standing beside the highway. Nobody knew how long his truck stayed abandoned out there before anyone found it. The old driver shrugged afterward, like he regretted mentioning it at all. Then he quietly asked me something I still think about sometimes. When the voice warned you, did it know your truck number too? I nodded slowly. The older driver looked genuinely uncomfortable after that. Then he said the one thing I wish I could forget. It only talks to drivers who are alone. Most truckers leave Channel 19 running because the road feels less empty when somebody's talking back. But after hearing stories like this, you start wondering how many voices out there are actually coming from another driver. Because think about it for a second. How did that voice know his truck number if nobody else was on the highway? Why did it warn him before he reached the rest stop? And if something really climbed onto the trailer, what exactly was leaving scratches deep enough to cut through steel? But honestly, the part that would stay with me the longest isn't the voice itself. It's the fact that another driver at the truck stop already knew exactly who he was talking about before a single word was explained. Many drivers share these stories to protect themselves. If you want to hear more Dread Files, subscribe and don't miss the next story. I was hauling electronics across western Kansas when this happened, running overnight toward Denver in late October. The road was dry, the sky was clear, and the wind kept pushing against the trailer. Nothing looked dangerous, which somehow made the empty highway feel worse. Around 2:45 in the morning, traffic disappeared completely. No cars ahead, no trucks behind, no lights anywhere across the fields. Just black pavement, flat land, and soft CB static beside my dashboard. My coffee was cold, my eyes were burning, and the road had started pulling me half asleep. Every mile looked copied from the last. That was when the radio clicked once, sharp and clean. A woman's voice came through, calm and professional. Eastbound commercial unit, prepare for way station check-in. I looked down at the CB because nobody talked like that on the radio. It sounded automated, but no open way stations were near that stretch. The next station on my GPS was almost 80 miles away. I grabbed the mic and asked who was calling. Static answered for a moment. Then she repeated, "Eastbound commercial unit, state your carrier and destination." Her voice was too clean, with no engine noise, wind, or background. I didn't answer. A tired man came through. Unit 17, livestock, headed to Pueblo. Then another voice followed. Unit 22, dry van, Salt Lake. A third driver said, Unit 41, refrigeration, westbound correction, eastbound now. He sounded confused, like he had just realized something was wrong. The woman answered, Unit 41 accepted. All static vanished after that. For almost 10 seconds, the cab was completely quiet. Then the woman said my company name, not my name. My company. I was pulling an unmarked rental trailer that week. Eastbound unit, she said. State your destination. I reached for the mic, then stopped. Something in my body knew not to answer. A green highway sign appeared through my headlights. Closed way station -1 mile. I had driven that route before, and that station had been abandoned for years. The CB clicked again. Proceed to the right lane. I stayed in the left. The voice repeated, calmer this time. Proceed to the right lane. Then a man whispered through the radio, close enough to sound inside my cab. Don't check in. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Before I could answer, the woman cut over him. Unauthorized transmission detected. The whispering man started breathing hard. Then he said, fast and desperate, "Keep moving, no matter what the lights do." The transmission snapped off. Ahead, the abandoned way station appeared beside the highway. Only it was lit now. The old scale lane glowed pale white in the darkness. The inspection office had one light on inside. Through the dirty window, I saw a figure sitting at a desk. It did not move. The entrance signal changed from dark to green. My GPS screen went black. The CB clicked again. Eastbound unit. Enter scale lane. I kept driving. The dashboard dimmed, and every light in the cab flickered once. For half a second, the engine sounded far away. Then the radio filled with voices. Drivers spoke over each other, giving loads, destinations, and mile markers. One voice said, "I already checked in." Another answered, "No, you didn't." Then the first voice screamed. The sound cut off so violently that I almost missed the curve. I passed the station entrance without slowing down. As I did, the green signal turned red. The figure inside the office stood up. I didn't look directly at it. I only saw something tall and stiff move behind the dirty glass. Then my CB radio spoke in my own voice. "Unit confirmed." My blood went cold. It was my voice exactly. Flat, tired, and close to the mic. A recording of words I had never said. The woman answered immediately. "Accepted." The truck lurched hard, like the trailer brakes grabbed by themselves. My speed dropped from 65 to 40. The steering wheel pulled toward the shoulder, and I fought it with both hands. In the mirror, the scale lane slipped behind me. Then I saw the trucks. Rows of semis sat behind the inspection building. No headlights, no running lights, no drivers moving anywhere. All of them faced the scale. All of them looked like they had been waiting for years. The CB filled with one final message. The woman said, "Late unit added to queue." Then the whispering man returned under static. "Don't let them number you." I slammed the gas, and the engine roared. The trailer jerked once, then whatever held the brakes released. For the next 20 miles, the CB stayed dead. No static, no chatter, not even on Channel 19. I stopped at the first open truck stop after sunrise. Nothing looked damaged underneath the trailer. Then I walked behind it and stopped. 3 words were written in dust across the rear door. Queue number 42. I quit that route 2 weeks later. I told my company the hours were getting to me. I never told them the real reason. When I pass a closed way station at night, I turn the CB down before it can ask me to check in. Most drivers think way stations are just part of the job. You slow down, follow the lights, check in, and keep moving. But what happens when the station has been closed for years, and something still knows your company name? Who are those other drivers giving their loads and destinations? Why were all those trucks lined up behind the building? And if he never touched the mic, how did the radio record his voice saying, "Unit confirmed"? That is the kind of detail that stays with you, because maybe the scariest part isn't that the way station was still operating. Maybe it's that something out there was still keeping a list. After hearing these accounts, the CB radio starts feeling less like a tool and more like an open door. A voice that knows your route, a crash that plays before it happens. A closed way station still calling drivers into line. Different roads, different nights. But the same question keeps coming back. Who is really on the other end of those transmissions? If these stories stayed with you, subscribe and return to the Dread Archives for the next case file. Each video opens a new file built around one theme: night routes, empty roads, hospital corridors, emergency calls, and places that seem normal until someone is left alone with them after midnight. Before you leave, look at the final screen. There are 2 more videos waiting for you there. One from drivers who stopped at isolated truck stops, and another from night workers who saw things they still can't explain. But before you choose one, Think about this. If a voice came through your radio tonight and said your name, would you answer?